goal of our show is to inspire and encourage others to pursue their hopes, aspirations, and dreams. I am super excited today. I've had a very blessed day, and God is just all around good to us, oh Lord. And I just want to thank him right now. I have a phenomenal guest set for tonight, and she is going to delve into a very important topic that is coming and that we have faced for years now. Every day you are seeing women that are being killed by their partners or by their husbands, and this is really an epidemic that needs to come to a stop, or we need to work in our communities to try to do what we can to prevent that from happening. So let's dive right in. My guest tonight is Melissa Holmes. Melissa Holmes is a woman who survived domestic violence as a result of being in an abusive relationship twice in her life. After experiencing a close call with death during an encounter with her abuser while in the second relationship, Melissa, being grateful that her life was spared, chose to use her experiences not only to bring healing to herself, but to help others. I have a tremendous admiration for her because she has been an inspiration to so many women throughout the United States. And I just wanted to bring her on to encourage someone that may be in that situation right now. Melissa is a domestic violence author. She's an advocate, and she also is a public speaker. She has many opportunities, has had many opportunities to launch some different projects. And one of her projects that launched is From Pain to Purpose. It's a new chapter, which is a domestic violence seminar and workshop which started in October of 2015, which expanded into a tour in which she has gone into several states and provided that training and that seminar to others. Melissa's latest project is Invisible Scars of Domestic Violence, and it is a documentary that deeply explores domestic violence and its evil which plagues many homes. This documentary will highlight each person in their interview in their segments. I just want to say, Melissa, you are a blessing. Are you there?
I'm here.
I'm doing pretty well. Now, we want to start in the show tonight. Can you tell us who Melissa Holmes is?
Melissa Holmes, besides being a mother, a daughter, a sister, a cousin, niece, she is a powerful force to be reckoned with when it comes to domestic violence, something that had entered her life without me giving it permission, came and changed my life in a certain aspect. And in order for me to take my life back, I had to figure out successful. So Melissa I wear many accolades. Like you said, I am an author. I am a playwright. I am a motivational speaker, amongst a lot of other things. I wear lots of many hats, and that's because it is super important for me to make sure I make such an impact about domestic violence in any possible way that I can, any possible way, any opportunities that I get to do that. I am taking advantage of each and every opportunity because it is super, super important. And I think one of the things that needs to be done is to make others feel comfortable who are still struggling with accepting that it has happened to them. We place so much blame on ourselves that we are the reason that this happened. Okay, maybe it was something that I did. When in all reality, I tell people, you have nothing, absolutely nothing to be ashamed about. In all reality, the person that abused you should be ashamed of their actions and how they treat other people and how, it's just something that's really, really plaguing the communities. So bringing awareness and, doing workshops and doing seminars and conferences is bringing awareness and sharing the signs. You will never know how much people don't know until you put them in a position to find out what it is that they know.
Okay. So now as far as your organization, you have created an organization, Love Shouldn't Hurt NY Incorporated. Can you tell me about that?
Absolutely. I did that organization about 7 years ago after surviving my last abusive relationship. That started out as a Facebook group. Initially, it was just supposed to have been this place that I created, almost like a diary, that it was supposed to have been this outlet for me, because just coming out of it, you're angry, there's so many questions that you need answered. So that was an outlet for me. And in between just writing, making posts and things, I had this light bulb moment that I know that I can't be the only person that is feeling like this, and there are so many others that I'm sure has experienced certain things. And so instead of keeping the group private, I decided to open it up, so that others could come in and have requests to come in. And after, from going from like maybe 30 members to like well over 1,000 members, literally overnight.
Wow.
After that, it just sort of kind of took on a life of its own. And so after dedicating so much of my time and trying to get established so that people knew who I was and basically what that group was about and what it entailed, and just trying to stay creative above everything else with all the other groups. And so I decided that it would not just cater to victims, or just would not cater to survivors. So I opened it up, and everybody was welcome. We have the survivors, we have the victims, and then we have those supporters. So everybody in that group plays a crucial part into making Love Shouldn't Hurt a success.
Okay.
Because you have the victims that are currently there that are going through something, and you have the survivors that can sort of kind of come in and says, okay, well, listen, I sympathize with you. I know exactly what you're going through, but this is what I did to get out of that situation. So maybe I can lend you and tell you, okay, this is how I survived. Even if you can't do exactly what I did, because everybody's situation and everything is different, but maybe it's something that I said and that you could take away from that and create your own survival tool for you. And then we have the supporters, especially men. I was aware that domestic violence just was not for women. And so I was aware that men were being abused too, although we really don't hear about it that much as we do as women. There's not so many cases. There are cases recorded, but they're really not spoken about. And that's because we look at men to be superior, so we think of them as being our protectors. So when we hear about a man being abused, everyone brushes it off like, oh, are you kidding me? And so, but there are men that are in the group to say, listen, I understand what you women have gone through, but I just want you to know I have your back. Like, all men are not the same, and we got you. And that gives, that lends so much support to those that really start to men bash. And all men, because he did that, and so they start to think that all men are the same. And so the men, the supporters that are there to let them know that, no, all men are not the same. And I'm totally against what it is that you are going through now.
Now, that's a different spin on it, most definitely. And although, around 85% of domestic violence cases involve women, there are also men that are abused. And so I think it's important for people to know about that also. And there are resources out there for them also, right?
Absolutely.
Including what you're doing.
Absolutely. It's just that it's not as many resources, but there are resources, unfortunately. So the more we continue to fight and the more we continue to advocate and educate, people will get to see that men are just as important as the women. And so, people will start to, my hope is that then people will start to gravitate and start to see that they need to create other avenues for men to be able to be supplied with those resources. They should be able to, most of the shelters are geared around women with children. And so, or a woman with child. But if a man walks into a shelter, and this is a story that I know of, a man that was being abused, and they were not married, they were girlfriend and boyfriend, but they had a child together. And she stabbed him. And we both know that she stabbed him in the arm, and we all know that could have went a total different way. But he chose to leave, and he grabbed the daughter, and he left. He went to the precinct to make a report that this had happened to him. And the desk officer could not believe that they had this 6'2" man that stood probably about maybe 220 standing there saying that he had just gotten stabbed or his girlfriend had beat him up. And so they literally made like a mockery of him. She gets up from the desk and she goes back to tell, like 2-3 other officers that were standing behind her. And then they sort of kind of just like looked in his direction and they snickered like it was funny. And he said to them, I'm coming in here and I'm trying to do the right thing by filing a police report. But we all know that if she was the one that would have walked in here with this scenario with the child and she would have been bleeding from the arm, you all would have been putting out an APB out there looking for me to come and pick me up. But now that I'm standing here and it's the opposite, they think that it's funny. And so he had no place to go. And he sort of kind of reached out to me, and I had to reach out to some other advocates that I know. And he had gone to a few shelters with his daughter, and he was turned away. He was not allowed because those shelters were for women with children or a woman with a child. And he ended up at one shelter just like begging and pleading like he really had no way. And someone overheard him at the shelter. And she pulled him aside and said to him, if he would come back, I believe it was like 10 o'clock, come around back, she will make sure he had a bed for him and his daughter.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And so we definitely need to create more resources for men that suffer in this way. I mean, that's I don't know what to say about that.
It was sad. Yeah. I really felt bad for him, not being able to have a place to go to stay. So it's almost like, okay, well, I don't have a place to stay. So his back is almost, and see, that's what happens. Then a lot of times your back is up against the wall because you have no place to stay, or you show up at the shelter. They tell you that they have no room for you. So now you left. What are you going to do? Am I going to sleep in the street or in the subways or wherever with my child? Or do I go back to where I just got my behind beat from, where she just stabbed me, where I know it's not safe, but at least I have a roof over my head? So, either men or women, they're really not given too many choices when it comes to certain things. And so does the system have to get better? Absolutely.
Yes.
Is that what bringing awareness is? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So as far as did you, when you started the group, I heard you say you didn't realize that it was going to blossom the way that it did. Were you kind of, when it began to grow, did you face any other challenges and obstacles as far as like, was your confidence level always very high, or were there people around you that were supportive, or did you go to your church? How did you overcome some of the obstacles when it came to creating your own organization and own group?
Support, absolutely none. When I decided that I was going to do this, I had no idea. Like you said, I had no idea that it was going to blossom. Like I said, I thought it was just going to be just a group where, we support each other. If we have resources or somebody have resources, if you need something, that kind of thing. But I guess because of, if you would, my realness, my passion, people tend to gravitate to you. And, before I knew it, like people were asking advice and this, that, and so forth and the other. And I was actually surprised. Not that I knew that if I wanted to do it, that I could do it. But at that moment, I wasn't prepared to have that to happen because, remember, I'm just getting out of this relationship. So there was a lot of things that I was still struggling with myself. And so when things just started to happen, it sort of kind of put me in that mindset, okay, well, you're here now and you have made so much great strides and you're getting such positive feedback. So what I did was I just, for like 3 years, I just solely dedicated my life just to the group. And so after it had done so well, I was like, okay, well then maybe it's time to take this to the next level. Maybe I should make this my brand. And so once I decided, okay, sort of kind of put things in place, and wrote down some things and how I wanted or what I saw for this group, it just took off. I think one of the things that I did was I was determined to win. And so when I would see people post something, I would just reach out. Like I just aired it out. And I just put raw, I just put everything on the line. And, they could either tell me no or yes. I would see people post about events that they were having and guest speakers. I would send messages. I say, well, listen, do you have all your guest speakers? And they would either say yes or no. And I would say, and they would say, well, what topic would you speak about? I was like, listen, on domestic violence. And so I would sort of kind of tell them that I'm a 2-time domestic violence survivor. And at that time, I wasn't really owning the advocate and the motivational speaker. I just wanted to get out there. I just wanted people know, because what I think for me, it was more important for me to let people see that I am real. And this happened to me, because I know for me, when I started going to counseling, it was a big turn off for me to go to counseling and for me to try to open up and talk about what had happened to me when I knew that the counselor couldn't relate. I don't want you talking to me in textbook form, because what happened to me didn't happen in textbook form. It happened in real life.
Amen.
So, you know what I mean? So I need somebody that has either, not that you want somebody to go through what you've gone through just so they can say that they can relate, but I needed some kind of connection. And see, if I'm living on reality and you living on textbook form, that don't work for me. So I had this light bulb moment that says, listen, okay, this is what you need to do. The more you tell your story, you find something about your story that is going to give people that moment, because that's when they know that it's real. I'm not coming in here talking to you and saying, sounding like I'm robotic and like I rehearse this stuff, because the truth is, every single time I tell this story, every radio show that I do, every event, the story is different. I can talk to you now, and I'm fine. I did a radio interview last week, and I got real emotional, and I started crying. And this is what happens. That's how people can relate to you, because they can say, they can relate better. So it's not like if I see somebody speaking, I can say, oh, yeah, I can relate to you. You really can't relate to me, because I can say, well, I ain't never been hit. So I'm just saying that because that's what society teaches us to say when someone is hurt. So I feel like if I'm real, then everybody else, they could either respect me for it or don't. The first step is to realize, like, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I know that sometimes I'm a little bit bold with my story, and that's because my story, no one else can tell my story like me, because it happened to me. And so that means if you ask me to come and do an interview, and then you says to me, okay, well, you can't say this and you can't say that. Well, can you substitute this and say? And no, I can't. Then your show is not the show for me, because that's not what happened to me. Didn't happen the way you want me to say it happened. So I have to give it to you like it happened. And there's things in my story that people will go, wow, that's really mean. And I go, and that very well may so be. But that's how I felt at that moment.
But I think the things that you say and that you have talked about in the previous interviews that I've heard, they are things that, as a domestic violence victim myself, those are feelings that I actually felt. You just
see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, you just want peace, that you are so desperate that you're just willing to do anything, to have
and that's the point.
Peace. And
that is exactly the point, that I want people to see that, because trust me, when I first started telling my story on social media, I would get these inboxes of these people that would try to discourage, oh my God, if that happened to, why would you tell? And I would come back and say, why do you even care? Because I was the one that was going through it. I was the one getting my behind beat. And if I'm okay with it now, I don't understand why you're not. Because I'm the one that had to endure certain things. And so I tell people, I just had someone say to me, I was guest speaking, and I do it on the radio shows too. And it's not that I'm making light, but that's how I cope with certain things. So if I say that I saw, because people can't believe that when I tell the story, and I say, my husband and I had hits out on each other. And that's just what it is. But, I tell people, you can't tell me that what I did was wrong until you understand what drove me to do that, to even think like that. But in the spin of things, in my normal self, Melissa would have never thought of doing something like that. You understand? So that's when battered woman syndrome is real. When mental illness, when you can think outside of yourself and you think about doing things to other people that otherwise you would never think of if you was in your right state of mind. But before you judge somebody, try to understand what drove them to that place in the first place. You understand? But that does not mean that my actions or my thought process was wrong. Had I acted on having him killed before he initially died, then yeah, you could say, you know what? But me now, in the right state of mind, I can look back and say, oh yeah, if I'd have had him killed, like, and I post on Facebook, like, battered woman syndrome and mental illness almost caused me to do the unthinkable to my husband.
Yes. And see, I think that's not, people don't realize that because you go through that mental torment of not being able to sleep at night. You worry about being embarrassed because they will demean you. They will go around and tell everybody that you're crazy and this and that and the other, that you're the one sleeping around when often they're the ones out there doing that kind of stuff. You know, they just will do that to dismantle your character and everything else. Nobody knows what it's like to barricade themselves behind a door to be safe. They don't know what it's like, you know?
Well, so they really, really don't. You're absolutely right. But I tell people, see, this is what drove me. My husband, the man that I married that I thought that was going to protect me, and we was a team. The minute he asked me to marry him and I agreed to marry him, everything, the man that I had known for the last 5.5 years that we had dated, I no longer knew who this person was. Immediately after we got married, I immediately started feeling like I was sleeping with the enemy.
Yes.
But the straw that broke the camel's back that brought me to that point was when I decided that I was going to leave. He had taken my son to work with him to keep me from getting my son. I still chose to leave with my daughter. My intentions was when I got off from work the next day, I was going to go to my mom's and I was going to get my son. But he had other plans. He left work the next morning and went straight to the courts with my son. And he went down to the courts and told them I had abandoned my son. They ended up giving him temporary custody of my son. Then he started having me served at my job with child support papers. He now want me to pay him child support for having my son temporarily until we went back to court. Then he had his friend come serve me with an order of protection to stay away from him and my son. I wasn't allowed to go by the house. My son's birthday is 5 days before Christmas, and I couldn't even see him. He wouldn't allow me to come. He wouldn't allow me to give him no gifts, no nothing. We had a court date to go back, and the judge said to me, Ms. Holmes, if you come back and you can prove that you have a stable place to stay, come back and provide me with an address. You can get your son back. By that time, he had already started stalking me. And so, although by the time I had went back, I had found an apartment. But because he had started stalking me, when I went back to court, I still didn't tell the judge that I had a place to stay. And I remember that judge banged that gavel and said, Donald Holmes will remain with custody of Darius Holmes until further notice. And he banged that gavel. My whole soul jumped out of my body. I dropped down on my knees at this man's feet in the courtroom, begging him, please don't take my son. He looked down at me like I was mess on the bottom of his shoe and yanked his leg away from me and walked out the courtroom with this smirk on his face. When I tell you I sat in that courthouse, the court officer had to escort me outside into the waiting area. I had cried for about an hour and a half, making myself sick, throwing up in the garbage can. And when I finally pulled myself together, I went in the bathroom, put some water on my face, and tried to get myself together. And when I looked up in that mirror, the first thing I thought about, the only way I'm going to get my son back is if I have him killed. I left that courthouse that day with the intentions on having my husband killed because I wanted my son. I went as far as to find a hitman. We took a meeting. We met, and he said to me, you bring a picture, both job addresses where he work at, what time he leave this job and make it to the next job. And he said, I promise you, he will come up missing and his family will never, ever find him. He said, I give you 2 days to think about it. If you call me and tell me that you want this done, we're going to make it happen. Went as far as told me how much he would charge me, give him half when I called him in 2 days if it was a go, when I bring him all the other information, and the other half when the job was done. When I left that meeting with that hitman, I left and I went to my mom's house. And when I went to my mom's, my son, DJ, came out the room. And the minute I looked up in DJ's face, I knew I couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. The only thing I can think about is I've lost my son temporarily now. But if my son was to ever find out I was the reason his father got killed, I would lose my son forever. And that wasn't a chance I was willing to take. So I called this guy back and told him, never mind. Although I knew that that was going to be the only way I got my son. And I couldn't do it. And then the following week, he put a hit out on me. And he called me at work, May 7th, 2003, and said to me, today is your day. And I promise you, you won't make it back to work tomorrow. And I remember when I hung up that phone, I wrote down his name, his address, social security number, and the telephone number to the apartment that we once shared. And I called the receptionist to my office, and I put it in an envelope, and I put it in my desk, and I told her that if I didn't make it back to work tomorrow, she was to take this envelope and give it to the police because that means my husband had me killed.
And you know what, Melissa, with you sharing that, in a relationship that I was in before, I remember doing the same exact thing. I remember taking my wallet and putting a note in there saying, if anything ever happened to me, this is the person's name, this is what I know about him, this is what happened. So I understand where you're coming from. I have truly, truly walked in your shoes and being at work and just even being uncomfortable at work because you're concerned about everybody else's safety, but then also you are concerned about, you're just embarrassed. You want to.
Well, I wasn't so much embarrassed because by this point he had worn me out mentally, and I remember he would make these threats, and I would say to him, you know what? If you're gonna have me killed, the only thing I ask is that you don't have me killed in front of my kids. Have somebody to catch me when I'm coming out from work, because I never want to have a chance. I never want to have a chance to see it coming, because I don't want to have to defend myself. I just want it to be done and over with. Like, he had worn me out.
Yes.
And I just couldn't. But the hardest thing, I tell people, the hardest thing for me is I have these two kids that are minors. I think my daughter was probably about 10 or 11. And I have my daughter saying, Mom, when is my brother coming? And I have to be strong for her. But my heart is breaking because this man just ripped my son out of my arms. I have nobody to talk to. This is a child. I can't go and have an adult conversation with her. So now I'm lost, and I'm stuck in between learning how to be strong for her. But my heart wants my son. And a man that I thought was supposed to love me and protect me is trying to destroy me and have me killed and all of these things. And so I remember he had called me that day, and I was so sure that when I clocked out at work that day, that was going to be it. I got to the door, and I remember just dropping my head in silence to make peace with what was about to happen when I walked out that door, because I was determined when I walked out the door, I was going to walk straight to the train station. I wasn't going to look behind me, because whoever he was going to send was going to catch me from behind, and I didn't want to see it coming. And I remember I got all the way to the train station, and nothing happened. But then my phone rang, and it's my son. And he's calling to say, Mom, Daddy is having an asthma attack. And I remember saying, hang up the phone and dial 911. And I went on up to the train stairs, and I'm waiting on the platform for the train so I can go to my daughter's school to pick her up from the after school. And my phone rings again. And the next call, it's my mom calling to say, I need you to meet me up at the hospital. And I'm saying, for what? Because by this time, her and I weren't on good terms, because she had taken the word of a man that was just married into the family. So when I chose to leave with my daughter, that was the first time I had seen my mother when I showed up at the hospital in a whole year since I had left. And so she kept saying, I need you to meet.
And you know what? And that's something that they will do. It's all about isolating you and taking away all your power to the point, because they're so manipulative and so very charming that they can fool your own family into thinking that she's lying. I would never do that. I love her so much, I would never hurt her.
And he
really?
did just that. Mm-hmm. He did just that. And so when I felt like she took his word, I lost all contact. And I chose to do that because if I would ever tell her where Yasmin and I was at, in fear that she would tell him. And so I just stopped calling and whatever. And then she called me after DJ had called, and I was like what? And she was like, I need you to meet me up at the hospital. I was like, I'm busy. I'm not coming up there now. Click, and I hung up the phone. She waited a little while, and she called back. And I answered the phone. I was like, why do you keep calling me? She just kept saying she wouldn't say why. She just kept saying, I need you to meet me at the hospital. And I said to her, well, clearly there's nothing wrong with you because you keep calling me on the telephone. So you need to tell me, before I come up there, you need to tell me why you want me to come up there. And she still wouldn't say, so I hung up the telephone, kept on doing what I was doing. I got my daughter from school. I went to the new place that I had just gotten, and changed. I was working in the doctor's office, changed my scrubs. Me and Yasmin went out to dinner. I took her out to dinner at BBQ's to eat. We sit in the BBQ's, and she calls again. You on your way? I said, no, I'm sitting having dinner. She kept getting on my nerves so bad because she kept calling back every couple of minutes. I just paid for the ticket. I was like, Yasmin, let's go. So I told her, I said, I'm on my way. I get in a cab. We go to Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. When I walked into my daughter and I walked into the emergency room, my mother and my sister are standing there. Before I got a chance to sit down, this woman comes from the back and says, where's the Holmes party? I raised my hand. She said, well, who are you? I said, this is my daughter, my mother, and my sister. She said, I need y'all to come with me to the back. I already knew. I said, are you taking me back here to tell me my husband died? She wouldn't say anything. I said, can I use your house phone to call my job and let them know I'm not coming in to work this week? He had called me at 2 o'clock, May 7th, 2003. 6 o'clock, he had died of an asthma attack, then went into cardiac arrest at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. The doctor came in. I said, I already know. Can I see his body? Because I had to know that this was for real. They said, when we prep the body, we'll come get you, move it into another room. We'll come get you 2 at a time. And so my daughter and my sister went in first, and then my mother and I went up. And my mother is standing by the door, and I walked up close and personal to his body, in a body bag, no shirt on, got the tube, the tape around his mouth, tube sticking out of his mouth. And I walked up to him, and I pat him on his chest. And I said to him, you know what, it is what it is. I never wanted it to go down like this. But I could not have asked for much more. You have just given me 2 things back, my life and my son. And I'm going to tell you something. I walked in that room not knowing what to expect, but I had a brand new walk when I walked up out of there. I couldn't even cry, but I promise you, the minute I touched his chest and said it is what it is, I felt so much lighter on my feet. I couldn't even, I had no more tears. When I tell you I left out of that hospital, I wanted to go to Sin City and start giving out lap dances.
Mm-hmm.
That's how serious it was for me. The only sad thing about that, I now had to go back to my mother's and explain to my son, who was only 7 years old, that his father had expired. Other than that, I was ready to go to Sin City and start swinging around the pole with a couple of drinks, sex on the beach, and I was ready to go give out lap dances. And that was how real it was for me. I felt like a ton of bricks had been lifted off my chest. My chest had felt so much lighter. And I was like, at first I couldn't believe it. I was like, what's the odds? At first, I promise you, I thought I was waiting for Ashton Kutcher to jump out because I swore I was being punked.
Yes.
I swear I thought I was being punked. I was like, what's the odds in that? That he just called you 4 hours ago claiming you was going to be in the ground. You was not going to make it back to work tomorrow. But he didn't know by 6. And the crazy thing is, when I went to the apartment, after he had died, to clean up, and so because I wasn't going to stay there and furniture just to clean out the apartment, right next to his asthma machine was the hitman's information. So I'm looking at this information, and I'm saying, so do I pick up this phone and call this number? And then I'm saying, well, what the heck am I going to say? Hello, this is the woman you were supposed to come kill? And so I decided not to do anything and just wait and see how it was going to play out. And after about 2 months, nothing had happened. So it came to my conclusion that he had an asthma attack before he ever got a chance to put the hit in place.
Mm.
But all the information was laid right out there in front of, right next to the asthma machine when I walked into that apartment.
Well, it sounds like you definitely had some angels and people praying for you from afar, because that is nothing.
And that's why I tell people, people get upset when I say I've left there and I wanted to start giving out lap dances. You don't know what he made my life to be. So when I felt like I was free about, yes, so they can take it however they want to. That's how I felt at that moment. I wanted to go to Sin City.
Because you feel free. You finally feel free. They don't know what it's like to not be free and to look over your shoulder every day, or not know what it's like to walk in your house and know that you won't have peace.
Exactly.
You know, that is a miserable life to have. But then you have people that, you know, that are in the church that just say, well, just pray and trust in God, but you don't know what I'm going through.
Exactly. You know, it's funny because I had someone say that to me the other day, because she was like, because I said, listen, yes, I left that courtroom, my reality. This is my reality. See, how you might have dealt with it another way. He might have taken your son, and you might have been okay with it. Well, he'll bring him back, because when he starts to get on head, he'll be ready to give him back to me. No, that was not my reality. My reality is I wanted my son. I love my son. So despite what he was telling my son that I would never, and see, what he was doing was, when he would allow me, he would never let me go back to the house. So I would call and I would say, I had birthday gifts and I had Christmas gifts and stuff for DJ. What he was doing was taking my name off of them, rewrapping the birthday and the Christmas gift, and giving them to DJ like they were his. So I never gave DJ nothing, and I never did nothing for his birthday or Christmas. So after he died, and DJ, we was having this conversation, because I realized that we needed counseling, because it was so much that had been said, and he had all this crazy stuff in DJ's head. And I remember DJ saying to me one day, but Ma, you never, when you chose to leave with Yasmin, you never came by and bought me birthday and Christmas gift, and that thing hit me in my heart like a ton of bricks. And I had to say to him, DJ, that is not the truth. And it's a good thing I remembered some of the things I had bought DJ. I said, DJ, you remember that gray Gap fleece sweatsuit? I said, you remember you had some Spider-Man sheets with the matching comforter and curtains? And I said, when you first started wearing boxes and you didn't want to wear briefs no more, and I had bought you these cute little Gap boxes? And he said, yeah, but I said, no, DJ, how would I know that you had that stuff if Daddy wouldn't let me come to the house? How would I know that you had that stuff in your possession? Because I bought them. Despite what he was saying, I bought them. That's how you got them there. But Daddy said, he rewrapped the gift, took my name, just rewrapped the gift all together, put a tag up there from Daddy. And for the 2 years that he had it before he died, you made it seem like I didn't give DJ, like I didn't buy him nothing. Like I totally, then he sit there and he tell DJ, see, your mother loved Yasmin more. That's why she took Yasmin and didn't take you. She really didn't want you. Really? Because if that was the truth, then I wouldn't have had DJ from the beginning. I'd have had an abortion. So why was it, see, and he's sitting there, and everything that he had done, and so although I felt free, I knew I still had a lot of work ahead of me that I had to do with DJ, because he had brainwashed him in believing that I didn't love him. But when I got the apartment, it was a 3-bedroom apartment, and I had already made up my mind but although I was still struggling with the battered woman syndrome, whatever, but I was determined at some point that I was going to fight. So when I got that apartment, 3-bedroom apartment, I had already had it decked out. It was already decorated, because in my heart, I was going to get DJ back one way or another. But I didn't have no idea, but I just kept saying to myself, DJ coming home one day. My son is coming home one day. I'm going to get my son. I didn't know that was going to be how I was going to get him. But if I had to fight, if I had to lawyer, whatever it was I had to do before I died, I was going to make sure I got DJ. And when DJ walked in when he died, and I went and I gathered all his clothes and everything when I cleaned and took him back, when DJ walked in, he saw his room. I had toys. I had, and I told him, I said, I was so hurt that although he was dead, I was still being tormented with the things that he had already brainwashed DJ at 7 and 8 years old. So how do you not, how do you unbrainwash a child? Because they are so, their minds are like sponges. As soon as you say something, they got it, it's absorbed, and they taking off with it. Listen, he had done so much, I promise you. I felt like if I could dig him up and just choke the life out of it and just put him back, I would.
But what do you do? Not only was it your son, he manipulated him, but what if it is family that he has manipulated? What if it is your friends that he's manipulated and made you out to be crazy and the worst person in the world? What do you do about that? How do you heal from that?
It's hard. Can it be done? Absolutely. I think one of the, people don't understand how much support plays a crucial part in somebody's healing. It really, really does. It was a lot difficult for me because I didn't have that support. The people that I thought would support me, like my mom and my sister, he would sit there and he would tell them stuff. And see, this is the crazy thing, that when you're first meeting someone and you tell them, you're sort of kind of just feeling each other out. So I remember a couple of dates in or whatever, I had said to him, had shared some personal things with him, that how when I was back in high school, how I used to smoke weed and, and stuff like that. So when he went down to the courts, he told them I was getting high. So then they ordered me, and I never felt so violated that I had to go to where ex-cons and stuff were just coming out and got to check in, and they got to do a piss test and all of this. I had to show up at this place where this woman gave me this cup. She went in the bathroom with me. There is no door on the bathroom, and she is standing there watching me use the bathroom because he done went down there and told these people. Now, I'm a grown woman. I'm now 50 years old. This is something that happened when I was a teenager. I want to say probably between 15 and 18. When I met him, I was already 32. Girl, he went down there and told them people all this foolishness. I never felt so violated in my entire life. And so I tell people, support is crucial in somebody's healing, because he trying to be so vindictive on me that my daughter has a different father. I had my daughter before him and I had even gotten together. And so he went and looked through paperwork and found my daughter's grandmother's number. And he called my daughter's grandmother, telling her, "Well, you better get your granddaughter, because if you don't go get her, she's gonna be in the ACS system." So the grandmother is calling me like, "Wait a minute, what's going on?" And so I'm trying to explain to her, and although my older sister, she was another one that took, so her and I was really not on. That's when I had seen her and my mother for the first time in over a year. But I had a sister, a middle sister, that her and I was as thick as thieves. And I remember he called her. He had never spoken to her. He saw her at the wedding, but just to call to say, hi, how are you, or whatever. And this particular day he called. And she said to him, he tried to tell her, "Oh, well, let me tell you about yourself." She said, "Let me cut you off right here." She said, "First of all, you ain't never called me to see how I was doing. That's number one." And she said, "Number two, you are not going to call me talking about my sister, because there is nothing you can tell me about my sister, even if she's wrong. That's my sister. But my other sister, she would sit there and she would entertain that." And see, and this is the, she was like, "You can't tell me nothing. That's my sister. Whether she's right or wrong, I'm always going to have her back." So she shut him down. She cut him off. And then it was like, then my sister died. So when I felt like I had that backbone, then she up and she died. And so now I'm alone again. And so it's one of those things. You can get over it. You just have to, some people I would say is stronger than others. And it has nothing to, it has nothing to be with you always having to be strong. Because sometimes you have to break down, you have to cry so you can get your second win, really start to think straight, okay, well, this is what I need to do. A lot of times you can't do that because I'll tell you, I had cried so much and sometimes all I just saw was red.
Mm-hmm.
But, the down thing to that is that it's very cool to get into counseling
mm-hmm.
and let them help you. You have to have some kind of connection. Like I said, you can't be on some reality stuff and they on some textbook, what they done read and what they feel that they supposed to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be some kind of connection. I'm telling you, I was on medication. I was like on 4 or 5 medications and just kept me zoned out all the time. I couldn't function. And I remember I was so depressed. And I remember my son saying to me, listen, you're going to have to get up from here and you're going to have to figure out how to do this because I've already lost my father and I can't lose my mother too.
Okay,
that lit something up under me.
We have 1 minute to wrap up. If there is a woman out there now, please, is there something you would tell her, and how would she get in contact with you?
Absolutely. If there's anybody out there that is going through that, I would say, it's a tough struggle, but please, please, please don't give in to, because you're going to be fighting a lot of demons. And don't give in to those demons, as far as suicidal thoughts, been there, and, depression. But you do need to deal with your feelings, and that is not the way to deal with it. The way to deal with it is to go to counseling. You definitely need support. Support is definitely crucial. And sometimes we just need a little medication to sort of kind of clear our minds so that we can begin to think and function clearly. There are a lot of support. There's a lot of resources. And if anybody needs to be able to get in contact with me, I am all over social media. You can either type in Melissa Holmes or type in Love Shouldn't Hurt NY Inc., and I will pop up. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, you name it, I'm there. They can even send me an email. It's Melissa Holmes, the number 67.mh@gmail.com. I respond to everyone. You need support. I'm there to listen. If I'm in a position to come to where you are, if you are not in New York City, I go with people to court to face the abusers that have been. So I do it all, and it's just one of those things that I'm passionate about. But please, please, please seek help and get out, and please be careful about your escape. Most homicides happen once someone leaves their abuser. So please be smart and strategic about your escape. And please know that when you leave, stay gone, lose all contact. If he calls you and try to manipulate you to come back, don't go.
Okay.
Call up.
Okay. All right. Well, Melissa, thank you so very much for ministering to our souls and letting us know about domestic violence. And thank you, radio audience, for listening to this interview. It was definitely powerful. Thank you for listening to Inspire and Uplift Radio with LaShonda Millsap. I'm sorry about that. Tune in next week on Wednesday and listen to my show. Thank you. You have a good evening.